The biggest lessons I've learned in my life are here. Through different topics, I'm going to inspire and motivate you to reach your success and your dreams. I'm so grateful that you're here on Journey to Success. So let's enjoy my next episode together. Hi guys, my name is Fabio from the Fabio Podcast and welcome. Today we're going to talk about a speech regarding J.K. Rowling. I know that some of you doesn't really agree about what J.K. Rowling said in the last years. I know that some of you support this and maybe other people like me try to be more reasonable and pragmatic about what she said, even if I don't agree. But the point is that she's a person who I admire because anyway she reached a success in a very strangle way. And without any help, so she did very good, in my opinion. And she made this speech for at Howard University in 2008. And let's start. Let's read her speech. Let's see. So she said, "Actually, have wrecked my mind and heart for what I ought to say to you today. I've asked myself what I wish I had known at my own graduation and what important lessons I have learned in the 21 years that have expired between that day and this. Have come up with two answers. On this wonderful day, where we are gathered together to celebrate your academic success, I've decided to talk to you about the benefits of failure. And as you stand on the threshold of what is sometimes called real life, I want to extol the crucial importance of imagination." So, as you can see, regarding, our journey to success, all the people, motivational speaker, gurus, actors, or in this case, writers, well, not all the people, but, the people who strangled and they had a real journey to success, they always talk about the benefits of failure. How important it is to fail. We live in a world where the people, the community, your family talk to you and advise to you to be the best in this world without failing, right? But the truth is that to become good in something, you have to fail. Unless you are a prodigy about it, but that's just, one case up 10,000. She's also say, I want to extol the crucial importance of imagination. So she doesn't talk about law of attraction, I guess, but also in this case, importance of imagination, vision, and now, regardless about the law of attraction topic, vision yourself as your future hero is very important to reach your success, She said, "This might seem quite exotic or paradoxical choices, but please bear with me. Looking back at the 21-year-old that I was at graduation is a slightly uncomfortable experience for the 42-year-old that she has become. Half my lifetime ago, I was striking an easy balance between the ambition I had for myself and what those closest to me expected of me. And what those closest to me expected of me. I was convinced that the only thing I wanted to do, if ever, was to write novels. However, my parents, both of whom came from impoverished backgrounds and neither of whom had been to college, took the view that my overactive imagination was an amusing personal quirk that could never pay a mortgage or secure a pension. And just a small note, it's important to note that most of the times the people around us who advise to not follow our dreams are the people who didn't pursue their dream, are the people who took just the failure as the final destination. And most of the times these people are our parents, is our family. And it's interesting, that also J.K. Rowling's family, or well, in this case, J.K. Rowling's parents, had, the same background. A background where they led her to, maybe at the early age, to make her understand that the right way to work in this world is just with hard work and have a pension, etc., right? To reach a good medium average life. But evidently, she didn't believe it. She was right. So I was convinced that the only thing I wanted to do ever was to write novels. Okay. However, my parents, both of whom came from. We read this. Sorry. So yeah, we read. So they had hoped that I would take a vocational degree. I wanted to study English literature. A compromise was reached that in retrospect satisfied nobody, and I went up to study modern languages. Hardly had my parents' car rounded the corner at the end of the road than I ditched German, then scooted off down the classics corridor. I cannot remember telling my parents that I was studying classics. They might well have found out for the first time on graduation day. Of all subjects on this planet, I think they would have been hard put to name one less useful than Greek mythology when it came to securing the keys to an executive bathroom. I would like to make it clear, in parentheses, that I do not blame my parents for their point of view. There is an expiry date on blaming your parents for steering you in the wrong direction. The moment you are old enough to take the wheel, the responsibility lies with you. What is more, I cannot criticize my parents for hoping that I would never experience poverty. They had been poor themselves, and I have since been poor, and I quite agree with them that it is not an ennobling experience. Poverty entails fear and stress, and sometimes depression. It means 1,000 petty humiliations and hardships. Climbing out of poverty by your own efforts is indeed something on which to pride yourself, but poverty itself is romanticized only by fools. What I feared most for myself at your age was not poverty, but failure. At your age, in spite of a distant lack of motivation at university, where I had spent for too long in the coffee bar writing stories, and far too little time in at lectures, had a knack for passing examinations, and that for years had been the measure of success in my life and that of my peers. I'm not dull enough to suppose that because you are young, gifted, and well-educated, you have never known hardship or heartbreak. Talent and intelligence never yet inoculated anyone against the caprice of the fates. And I do not for a moment suppose that everyone here has enjoyed an existence of unruffled privilege and contentment. However, the fact that you are graduating from ours suggests that you are not very well acquainted with failure. You might be driven by fear of failure quite as much as desire for success. Indeed, your conception of failure might not be too far from the average person's idea of success. So, high have you already flown academically? Ultimately, we all have to decide for ourselves what constitutes failure. But the world is quite eager to give you a set of criteria if you let it. So I think it's fair to say that by any conventional measure, a mere 7 years after my graduation day, I fell on an epic scale. An exceptionally short-lived marriage had imploded, and I was jobless, a lone parent, and as poor as it is possible to be in modern Britain, without being homeless. The fears my parents had for me and that I had for myself had both come to pass, and by every usual standard, I was the biggest failure I knew. And just a small note, it's interesting to also know a little bit about her story. There is a nice podcast. It's a short podcast, and the name, let's see. I'm gonna say to you now. Yeah, The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling. So if you are going to these episodes, you are going to understand a little bit about her story and what she went through to become successful, and also the way how she approached her previous husband and how her husband was kind of violent to her. And she already had a child. If I'm not wrong, the husband treated her like hiding, her script, her Harry Potter script. So, all these things they leave a mark, and this mark is, you can use this mark for a good thing on your life, on your success, or maybe you can cry and says that you are a victim about it. She reacted, she went through, she escaped from that situation. So I just admire people like that, So, let's go forward. She escaped from her house, but she confronted the situation, so just to be clear. Because if I'm not wrong, the husband was so much violent, and if I'm not wrong, he then also the key of the first door. And I don't know, as I said, it was very tough situation, but she did it. So let's go forward. Before we go through, if you're enjoying this podcast, please consider taking just 3 seconds to share it with someone else. It is a small gesture that could make a big difference in someone's day. Now, sit back and enjoy the rest of the episode. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that failure is fun. That period of my life was a dark one, and I had no idea that there was going to be what the press has since represented as a kind of fairy tale resolution. I had no idea how far the tunnel extended and for a long time. Any light at the end of it was a hope rather than a reality. So why do I talk about the benefits of failure? Simply because failure meant stripping away of the inessential. I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was, and began to direct all my energy into finishing the only work that mattered to me. Had I really succeeded at anything else, I might never have found the determination to succeed in the one arena I believed I truly belonged. I was set free because my greatest fear had already been realized, and I was still alive, and I still had a daughter whom I adored, and I had an old typewriter and a big idea, and so rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. Here there is a nice phrase. I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was and began to direct all my energy into finishing the only work, etc., etc. So, you know this phrase, and began to direct all my energy. Sometimes we tend to do too many things, we tend to do too much, and we are not really focused on something that we should do to make us happy. And if you focus and if you direct all your energy on just one thing per time, then you are going to be faster to realize any goal than rather spread this energy to different, goals and challenges. When people say, I reached success after 7 years, after 10 years, after 15 years. Also myself, I started this journey more than 10 years ago. And I used to say to the people, it took me more than 10 years, etc., etc. But in these 10 years, I spread my energy to anything else. I spread my energy to different projects. I spend my energy to looking every time for a job to maintain myself. But if you find a job that doesn't satisfy you, meanwhile, that is gonna take more energy from from what you have to. It's going to take you energy from your desire goal. Okay, so this is very important. The energy factor, it's very important. You might never fail on the scale I did, but some failure in life is inevitable. It is impossible to live without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default. Failure gave me an inner security that I had never attained by passing examinations. Failure taught me things about myself that I could have learned no other way. I discovered that I had a strong will and more discipline than I had suspected. I also found out that I had friends whose value was truly above rubies. The knowledge that you have emerged wiser and stronger from setbacks means that you are ever after securing your ability to survive. You will never truly know yourself or the strength of your relationships until both have been tasted by adversity. Such knowledge is a true gift for all that it is painfully won, and it has been worth more to me than any qualification I ever earned. Given a time machine or a time turner, I would tell my 21-year-old self that personal happiness lies in knowing that life is not a checklist of acquisition or achievement. Your qualifications, your CV are not your life. So you will meet many people of my age and older who confuse the two. Life is difficult and complicated, and beyond anyone's total control and humility to know that will enable you to survive. It's vicissitudes. Vicissitudes. You might think that I choose my second theme, the importance of imagination, because of the part it played in rebuilding my life, but that is not wholly so. Though I will defend the value of bedtime stories to my last gasp, I've learned to value imagination in a much broader sense. Imagination is not only the unequally human capacity to envision that which is not, and therefore the fount of all invention and innovation, in its arguably most transformative and revelatory capacities. It is the power that enables us to empathize with humans whose experiences we have never shared. One of the greatest formative experiences of my life preceded Harry Potter, though it informed much of what I've subsequently wrote in those books. This revelation came in the form of one of my earliest day jobs. Though I was slopping off to write stories during my lunch hours, I paid the rent in my early 20s by working in the research department of Amnesty International's headquarters in London. There in my little office, I read hastily scribbled letters smuggled out of totalitarian regimes by men and women who were risking imprisonment to inform the outside world of what was happening to them. I saw photographs of those who had disappeared without a trace, sent to Amnesty by their desperate families and friends. I read the testimony of torture victims and saw pictures of their injuries. I opened and written eyewitness accounts of summary trials and executions, of kidnappings and rapes. Many of my co-workers were ex-political prisoners, people who had been displaced from their homes or fled into exile because they had the temerity to think independently of their government. Visitors to our office included those who had come to give information or to try and find out what had happened to those they had been forced to leave behind. I shall never forget the African torture victim, a young man no older than I was at the time, who had become mentally ill after all he had endured in his homeland. He trembled uncontrollably as he spoke into a video camera about the brutality inflicted upon him. He was a foot taller than I was and seemed as fragile as a child. I was given the job of escorting him to the underground station afterward, and this man whose life had been shattered by cruelty took my hand with exquisite courtesy and wished me future happiness. And as long as I live, I shall remember walking along an empty corridor and suddenly hearing from behind a closed door a scream of pain and horror such as I have never heard since. The door opened, and the researcher poked out her head and told me to run and make a hot drink for the young man sitting with her. She had just given him the news that, in retaliation for his own outspokenness against his country's regime, his mother has been seized and executed. Every day of my working week in my early 20s, I was reminded how incredibly fortunate I was to live in a country with a democratically elected government, where legal representation and the public trial were the rights of everyone. Every day I saw more evidence about the evils humankind will inflict on their fellow humans to gain or maintain power. I began to have nightmares, literal nightmares, about some of the things I saw, hear, and read. And yet I also learned more about human goodness at Amnesty International than I had ever known before. Amnesty mobilizes thousands of people who have never been tortured or imprisoned for their beliefs to act on behalf of those who have. The power of human empathy leading to collective action saves lives and frees prisoners. Ordinary people whose personal well-being and security are assured join together in huge numbers to save people they do not know and will never meet. My small participation in that process was one of the most humbling and inspiring experiences of my life. Unlike any other creature on this planet, humans can learn and understand without having experienced it. They can think of themselves in other people's minds, imagine themselves in other people's places. Of course, this is a power, like my brand of fictional magic that is morally neutral. One might use such an ability to manipulate or control just as much as to understand or sympathize. And many prefer not to exercise their imaginations at all. They choose to remain comfortably within the bounds of their own experience, never troubling to wonder how it would feel to have been born other than they are. They can refuse to hear screams or to peer inside cages. They can close their minds and hearts to any suffering that does not touch them personally. They can refuse to know. I might be tempted to envy people who can live that way, except that I do not think they have any fewer nightmares than I do. Choosing to live in narrow spaces can lead to a form of mental agoraphobia, and that brings its own terrors. I think the willfully unimaginative see more monsters. They are often more afraid. What is more, those who choose not to empathize may enable real monsters, for without ever committing an act of outright evil ourselves, we collide with it through our own apathy. One of the many things I learned at the end of the classics corridor down which I ventured at the age of 18, in search of something I could not then define, was this. Written by the Greek author Plutarch, what we achieve unwardly will change other reality. Beautiful quote. What we achieve unwardly will change other reality. That is an astonishing statement, and yet proven 1,000 times every day of our lives. It expresses in part our inescapable connection with the outside world, the fact that we touch other people's life simply by existing. So today I can wish you nothing better than similar friendship, and tomorrow I hope that even if you remember not a single word of mine, you remember those of Seneca, another of those old Romans I met when I flew down the classic corridor in retreat from career ladders in search of ancient wisdom. As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. I wish you all very good lives. Thank you very much. So, very beautiful. I loved the first part and the last part. I think the second part was very personal, but it can also teach something about how works the human being mind and how much we are unvalue our life sometimes, when we just should look around to understand that we are lucky, Only the fact that I'm recording with a mic, I have a computer, a Wi-Fi connection means I have money, I have a job to do this. And you guys, you have the capacity to breathe, to listen to what I'm saying. And that's part of something very beautiful, but we find this so discounted about it, right? And we don't understand that it's not the normality. We think it's the normality, but if you go, in other countries or if you notice a little bit other realities different than ours, you can understand how much tough and hard can be their life. And I think that's what J.K. Rowling at the time tried to explain, that we are fortunate and we have tools. So with these tools, we can touch the lives around us. And when we do, it's just a beautiful thing. So please reach your dreams, because That's what really matters. And she's right at the end. She says, as a tale, so is life, not how long it is, but how good it is what matters, right? To leave a mark in this world, a positive mark, a good mark that can touch any soul. So thank you so much, guys, for being here in the Fabio Podcast Journey to Success, and see you next time. Cheers. Here we are. Congratulations. You just finished my entire episode. So the only thing I ask is to take a moment to give Journey to Success a rating. By the way, thank you so much for being here on Journey to Success. I'm very grateful. Thank you, and see you next time.